45.
Oh, you were saying something else.
Oh, you don't have to know that. Sorry. No, sorry. My second job is to kind of.
I said she needs to spank me harder. Ooh. This is a great item to round off this batch. What? Okay, this is, who signed this?
Matt Mercer.
What?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Who here likes Matt Mercer?
Whoa.
All right. Who here likes Otafest? Who here wants the Otafest 20th Anniversary Guidebook signed by Matt Mercer?
Oh, yeah.
So that's 20. Several people. I have an initial bid of 20 over here.
40.
40.
50.
50.
60.
60. 70.
Jesus, that in Christ.
It's family friendly. You don't get spanked, only I get spanked.
At least it's
You can spank me for his misbehavior.
Hey, he's a good tap dancer.
70 going once, 70 going twice. Sold! Thank you very much.
I'll just do it like that. I already did it. See? By the time you showed up, he's been in the back corner.
Yeah.
Hold on. So now I'm going to talk about child abuse. And boundaries and how we can prevent them. So, there are things I will talk about in 18 plus that I will not talk about here. But I will say that people who are victims of other people abusing them are trained in certain ways of thinking, which help the abuser. It's kind of like Pavlov, it's kind of like training a dog. If you want your, say for example, if you've got a cat, and you want if you want the cat to wake you up at, say, I don't know, 5 a.m. every morning, because you want to be up before work and get a workout in, right? You can't just be like, hey cat, wake me up. You have to interact with the cat in certain ways. For example, if you spend a week feeding the cat his favorite food at 5 a.m., then on Sunday at 5 a.m., that furry little
Thing.
cat will show up next to your bed and say, meow, 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 for 20 minutes until you wake up and give him food. So you can sort of hack your own life if you have a pet by making them an alarm clock. But what you've done there is you've trained the cat to expect a certain thing and even to invent new behaviors in response to the thing they expect to happen. Because as much as we all like the idea of free will, we're basically hackable meat robots. So, people who suffer trauma, remember what I said about lazy storytellers? Just about everyone who suffers trauma, and this is like, I've gone to therapy for reasons I'll explain in the 18 plus. Psychologists are pretty much like, there's textbook responses to trauma, and that includes like, I fell off a cliff and broke both legs. I got hit in traffic, right? Or a parent died. Or like, terrible relationship with abuse. That's all traumas going in, but there's a fairly standard set of behaviors that come out of it. Because we're hackable meat robots and we have pretty predictable responses to things. Because we're lazy storytellers. So what happens when someone suffers trauma? Our instinct is to look for a simple explanation. And because we're lazy storytellers, our explanation is often, a bad thing happened to me. Bad things must happen to bad people, therefore I must have been bad to deserve it. Now, because I said child abuse at first, kids learn that language, learn that lesson, learn that, come up with that story really easily. I know 35-year-old adults, perfectly like established, sane, a terrible thing happens to them, not by anybody else, like an accident, and they come out of it and they're like, I think I might have deserved that. And it's like, someone hit you in traffic. How did you deserve that? Well, I mean, the light was yellow. I'm like, the 2,000-pound death machine had a legal obligation to stop. Yeah, but no. So what happens is, people who experience trauma come up with a story in their head. because we all tell ourselves stories, and the story that most trauma victims tell themselves, trauma survivors, is a bad thing happened to me, I must have done something to deserve it. So, that particular habit is something that abusive people who try to manipulate others to do things for them, they play on that. They tell other people, you're a bad person because you didn't do the thing I wanted to do. That's why bad things are happening to you. When what's really happening is a bad person has come along and just like smacked you because you didn't do the thing they wanted. Then they blame you for it. The counter to that and everything else that a bad person can do to you is boundaries. A very simple concept, which I don't have a whiteboard behind me to illustrate with, but imagine a line, okay? This side of the room, you're gonna pretend to be you. This side of the room, you're gonna pretend to be someone else, okay? So here's the middle of the room. If I'm me, I'm on this side of the room, and if I'm anyone but me, that's that side of the room. If I have an emotion, if I'm angry or happy or sad, if I'm melancholy, if I'm stressed, if I'm tense, if I'm joyous, that's an emotion that I'm having. That's on this side of the line, okay? If someone else is having a bad day, if someone else is stressed, if someone else is sad, if someone else is tired, that's their emotion, okay? My emotions are on my side, their emotions are on their side. I can't get onto that side of the line. So if someone is having a bad day, if someone's sad, I can offer them an ice cream. Will that make them happy? Correct. It will not make them happy. It will make them having ice cream. So I've been to Disneyland several times. Most people at Disneyland, very, very happy. Disneyland engineers the experience to make people happy. But even Disneyland can't force people to feel an emotion. They can manipulate really well, but they can't force it. I've seen people miserable at literally the happiest place on earth. Because I'm here, you're there, other people's emotions can't be controlled by me. I can try to influence them. I can, here's some ice cream, or let me show you a picture of a sad crying puppy. Maybe that'll make you sad, right? But I can't control other people's emotions. Here's the other thing. When I have an emotion, I'm also in charge of how I react to that emotion. So let's say you've got a final coming up, and you're stressed about the final, right? So that emotion, that's you're being stressed. Now you're being stressed because circumstances outside of you are pressing in. Not ideal circumstances, because no one wants to write a final. You have the option of how you're going to respond to that. You can sit there and be like, oh God, what if I fail? Oh, if I fail, then I'm going to drop out of school. If I drop out of school, I'm going to have to pump gas. If I have to pump gas, I'm never going to get married or find love, and I'm just going to die alone, and my cats are going to eat my face. I know people that's their response to stress. Now, I'm not saying that, well, they're idiots, and, there's reasons they sort of get into that mindset, but they have control, and they take those actions. And they're the only ones responsible for those actions. Now, they may have been trained into some bad habits, but right now, as adults, they're the only ones in charge of their actions. In the same way, you can also go, well, I'm stressed. Why am I stressed? Final's coming up. What's the best outcome? Well, I could pass. If I pass, I'll graduate, I'll get a good job. Okay, how can I ensure the best option? Well, I should probably study for the final. That is your choice, what you're going to do in response to the emotions that you're having. If you're angry at someone for having a phone on when you're talking about stuff. So, you're responsible for your emotions and your actions. Other people can't make you do anything. You cannot make other people do anything. Now, if you're two people in a relationship, you can negotiate. You can be like, normally I use sex for this, but you can be like, I like ice cream and you don't like ice cream, you like steak and I don't like steak. So why don't we do this? Every Sunday, we'll have a steak dinner, and every Saturday, we'll go out for ice cream. You don't have to eat the ice cream, I don't have to eat the steak. We can negotiate. Now in that, both people have decided to do something that the other person wants to do, but they're not totally into. That doesn't mean that anybody's controlling the other behavior. There's been a negotiation. Each person has chosen to act in a certain way because they're hoping for certain consequences like a healthy relationship. But here's the problem. An abusive person will tell you, I'm sad, make it stop. Or, you have made me so happy, you're responsible for my happiness. And that's toxic. Doesn't sound toxic, but it's really toxic because next week, when they're not happy, whose fault is that if you're the one who makes them happy? Right. So, the reason boundaries are the way to stop abuse is that when you understand that your emotions and your behaviors are entirely under your control, they're your responsibility, and other people's emotions and other people's behaviors are only on them, and you can't fix that, then when an abusive person tries to train you and go, an abusive person will usually do something like this, I'm feeling bad. I don't understand boundaries that well. You are around me while I'm feeling bad. I'll blame you for my bad feelings. I'm going to hit you, smack. That bad thing happened to you because you deserved it, because you're a bad person, because you made me feel bad. Every step of that ignores boundaries. The boundary between your emotions and their emotions, your behavior and their behavior, right? You're not allowed to touch other people without their consent, right? Cosplay is not consent. That's boundaries. You're not allowed to touch other people because that's crossing a physical boundary. You're not allowed to like tweak someone's nipples unless they want it because that's crossing a physical and or sexual boundary. Boundaries and a solid understanding of them, I was talking about my nipples. You've tweaked tonight. This afternoon. And later tonight. If she's sticking around for the plus 18, we'll see what we can. Once you understand that your emotions are your emotions and not anyone else's, other people's emotions are their emotions and not yours, you can't control what other people are doing or feeling, the abusive person's chain of how they get to an explanation of that's your fault, it breaks. So if a 6-year-old who very easily believes that bad things happen to them because they've been a bad kid, especially if the abuser tells them, you're a bad kid, this is why the bad thing happens to you, the cure, more or less, is to understand that circumstances are not the same thing as what goes on in your head. A bad thing happening to you doesn't happen because you're a bad person. It happens because the world sucks. Your feeling bad is something you have the responsibility to deal with. Other people feeling bad aren't your responsibility. Other people hitting you, or touching you, or blaming you for their emotions have bad boundaries, and the best response is to establish that boundary. I've got like a minute and a half, I'll finish up with this. Here's how, now that we've discussed, now that I've ranted about what a boundary is, here's how you defend it. If someone does something that you feel is inappropriate, you can't say, never do that again. You can say, look, if you insist on, I'll take an example from my own life. If you insist on telling me about your weird God thing, we're not going to have any more conversations. Now, I'm not telling them they can't ever talk about their weird God thing. I am telling them that they can't have a conversation with me because that's the two of us. If they're going to infect that with their weird God thing, they don't get my half of it, right? Or if you hit me, we're not going out again. Or if you try to threaten me with you're not going to talk to me for a week because you're in a bad mood, well then we're not going to have a relationship. You can establish boundaries. You're like, you cannot do this thing to me, and if you try to do this thing to me, if you try to blame me or something, then here's the consequence. We're going to take a month off. We will stop talking. You will not be my friend anymore. You're dead to me. You have to sort of weigh it in context, and there's worksheets out there. If you're interested in anything I've said, Google boundaries worksheet. There's a book called Mind Over Mood. It teaches many of these things. I highly suggest it. There. Now, I have ranted about that. Everybody has understood the basic concept I'm getting across, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good, that was a PSA because there's stuff I wish I had been told as a young child and never did. Now, none of you can blame me for not having told you.
I know I'll never be the same. Shook my world so hard again. Wish I washed away my sins. He's a dead man